Hi, welcome everyone. Instead of calling me Paradise, I think it's better just to call me Duke. And I'm the Chief Corporate Affairs Officer at DTAC. And today, indeed, is a very busy day for us. The team worked all weekend because we're doing a term of reference that will go to the TOT, hopefully to get some spectrum, this 2.3 megahertz of spectrum. So that's happening today too. So this was a good excuse to get out of the office. Everyone seems very stressed today. Yeah. So as I said, I'm the Chief Corporate Affairs Officer for DTAC, and I just want to thank the professor and Mahidol University for inviting me to come speak to you today. And it looks like a very comfortable environment. And I hope all of you, while I'm standing up here, are sitting comfortably in your seats, in your theater-style seats. But not too comfortably, because as you'll see in the presentation I'm about to give, comfort will kill you. Comfort will kill you. So why? What I want to explore today is, what is the danger of staying in the comfort zone? And what do we need to do in order to become comfortable with change? We need to be comfortable to embrace opportunity and embrace disruption, because the thing that is certain in your careers is that change will happen. Now, my company is at a critical point in time right now. The industry over the last couple of years has changed dramatically. I simplified this slide. It's actually very complex. But all of these colors represent all industries. And over the last 5-10 years, everything has spiked. Everything has spiked. So because the industry has changed so much for DTAC, we need to find a way to reinvent ourselves. So at DTAC, my top mission, amongst other things that was listed, my top mission is to ensure that change is something that is driven throughout the organization. We need to make sure, I need to help make sure that in the employees' minds, they have a change mindset. They need to change their attitude. They need to change their standards. And they need to challenge the status quo. But that sounds very easy, change. People hate to change. I'm sure all of you hate to change. Everyone loves their comfort zone. And in fact, this sounds dramatic, but people literally would rather die than change. Sounds dramatic, right? But I have a story to tell you. This is Greenland. Greenland, as you can see, is beautiful, but it has very few trees. The climate is cold, and not just cold, it's freezing almost the entirety of the year. It's a really cruel geographic location. It's harsh, okay? But the interesting thing is, in the 11th century, a group of Vikings, or Norsemen, ironically enough from Norway or Scandinavia, decided that this is what they wanted to call home. So they took a trip, came to Greenland in order to inhabit it. And this is what they look like. And for the most part, them moving to Greenland was a great move. It was successful. It bore a lot of fruits. Okay? They were able to wear their fancy uniforms, the tunics or the robes. And they stayed here for about 450 years, happily. They were able to displace quite successfully. They even brought cows so that they can continue their diet that they're used to. Cows so that they can drink milk and eat beef. And they even built churches with stained glass windows. So they were happy. Until about 450 years later, things changed. The environment got crucial. It got horrible. The cold weather got even worse. And all of this was compounded, all of these issues was compounded with the way that they were living and the fact that they didn't want to adapt to change. What do I mean? The Norsemen had the cattle that I mentioned to you. This cattle, these cows, grazed on the very fragile topsoil. This topsoil, during the cold times, should actually be used to insulate these houses. Okay, but they ran out of topsoil because the cattle were eating it all. The cattle that were producing milk, the milk needed to go somewhere, so they made wooden pails. Okay, so they chopped down what little trees there were in order to make the pails so that they could keep their milk. In order to keep it hygienic, of course, they would have to boil the hot water to clean the pails. Boiling hot water requires chopping down more trees and boiling the hot water to clean these pails. They did this to a point where the trees were gone. So when I hear this story, this is a story from Jared Diamond, and it was echoed again in Malcolm Gladwell's book, I often wonder, as these Vikings, as these Norsemen were chopping down the last few trees, what were they even thinking? What was going through their head? The more ridiculous thing is they were starving. These people were hungry. But if you know the geography of Greenland, it's surrounded by the sea. And there's so much fish. So you ask yourself, why wouldn't they just fish and eat fish? But historians and archaeologists go back to Greenland, and they're looking for fish bones. There are none. They maintained their diet that they're used to, drinking milk, eating beef, and they did not eat fish. They did not find one fish bone in these settlements. Now, the interesting part is these Norsemen actually coexisted. They were not the only ones in Greenland. There were indigenous people. These are Inuits. The Inuits were the indigenous people that stayed in Greenland. Now look at their outfits. They're wearing fur inside out. You don't see cows. There's no cattle. Their main staple of diet was fish, seals, walruses, that type of thing. Okay? And again, keep in mind, the Norsemen, the Vikings, met these guys. They saw what it took in order to live in Greenland and how to survive. But culturally, the mentality of the Vikings was that these people are low class. They're wretched, is what the book called it. They're wretched people. So instead of trying to adapt the culture, they chose instead to starve, get cold, and eventually died. So the moral of this story is comfort will literally kill you. Okay? It might not happen overnight. This, of course, as I mentioned, took 450 years. No one's going to come say, hey, you got to change right now, otherwise you're going to die. It's something that you always have to look for the opportunity to change. When do I need to change? But this is one of the hardest parts, as I've mentioned. Change. People hate to change, right? So I'd like to talk about change and why we need to do it from a business sense, all right? This is Bourbon. Has anyone heard of Bourbon? B-U-R-B-N. Anyone? Okay. It was an app on your phones. It was developed over a few months. Somebody had a great idea. It was really a complex idea. Bourbon was designed to get people to check in, similar to Foursquare, check into locations, but in addition to that, determine where you're going to go next and put a pin in and meet up with your friends. And if you meet up with your friends at the next location, you would earn points. When you meet up with your friends, if you take photos, you can upload the photos. It's very complex, very complicated. Again, built over a couple of months by the founder. When the founder, Kevin Systrom, realized that this thing didn't work, there is an interesting thing that I wanted to teach you about or let you know about. it's a business term that is throughout my presentation. It's called pivoting. Pivoting. So once Kevin Systrom realized that this was not gaining traction, Bourbon, too difficult to use, he decided to pivot. And he pivoted to one of the most popular apps today. And I'm sure most of you have it on your phones. It was recently bought by Facebook for about $1 billion US dollars. Does anyone have a guess? What's the app? I'll give you my gift from Mahidon if you can guess it. What guess? Anyone? What guess? This is Instagram. You get my gift back. This is Instagram. One of the most popular apps probably in all of your phones. So again, Kevin Systrom saw that his app was way too complicated. People couldn't use it. It's not simple enough. So he cut out all of the complexity. He cut out all of the clutter. And what was left was the simplest part, uploading and sharing photos. And right now, there are about 600 million active users on Instagram. 600 million, okay? So this is one very good case of a startup pivoting and always trying to find a way to change in order to be successful. I'll give you a couple more. These guys created a horrible app. Horrible app. It was called Tune In, Hook Up. Tune In, Hook Up. Tune In, Hook Up was the precursor to Tinder. You know Tinder, the date app? Who uses Tinder? You don't have to admit it. Tinder was basically what this was based off of, but this allowed you, Tune In Hookup allowed you to look at videos of people you're interested in before you hook up with them. Horrible app, horrible name, and it didn't work. It didn't work. So what did these two guys do? Again, they pivoted. That key word, they pivoted. And they pivoted very successfully. Because you know this guy, Chad Hurley, and the guy on the left, Steve Chen, each are worth $350 million each, okay? So guess what they pivoted to? It's an app, it's an online service that is probably the second most popular behind Google. I'm sure most of you have used it. And actually, Google just recently bought it for about $1.6 billion. Does anyone want to guess what the app is or what the online service is? This is YouTube. Yes, who said it? This is YouTube. YouTube is, again, second most popular site on the internet behind Google. In fact, analysts estimate that by 2020, the year 2020, YouTube revenues will reach over $27 billion. Now, is it better to pivot and be like YouTube, or don't pivot and die like a Viking? Okay? But what is pivoting? I want to explain to you a bit more about pivoting. The way to succeed using pivot is not an accident. There's a methodology to this pivot, okay? This is Jennifer Hyman. She's the CEO and co-founder of an app or an online shop called Rent the Runway. Has anyone ever heard Rent the Runway? Maybe not. Rent the Runway allows you to rent ballroom dresses or beautiful dresses, mostly for women, for a fraction of the cost. So these dresses get sent to your home, you wear it to your event, and then you return it, okay, for maybe 10% of the cost of a dress. before she got to that platform, that business model, she had to experiment a lot and go through many pivots. Pivot one. Jennifer Hyman was a Harvard University graduate student. She had an idea, okay? And she wanted to find a way to see whether people are interested, women are interested to rent dresses. So what'd she do? She created a pop-up shop in Harvard Square. She allowed about 140 women to come into this shop with the dresses, try them on, and see whether they wanted to rent the dresses and take it home and send it back. 35% of the 140 wanted to give it a try. And you know, all of those dresses got returned back to her clean, in good condition, except for maybe 2 dresses that had some stains on it that were easily washed out. Okay, so she realized, hey, this is a successful experiment. But let me pivot, because it's not easy to have all these shops in different locations. It's a hard business model to control. So the second pivot was done at Yale University. Okay, she went to Yale University, and her idea was, okay, would people be willing to touch the dress but not try them on? Hold it up, see how it looks, feel it, but not try it on. She increased the number of dresses, and what she found out was there was an increase, 35 to 55% increase in people renting these dresses and returning them. But again, these 2 experiments relied heavily on a physical location. So then she did the third experiment, or the third pivot. Third pivot was completely an online experience. So she would show the dresses online, and you're not allowed to touch it. You can't try it on, you can't feel it. But would people rent these dresses? So she expanded her catalog of designer dresses and emailed women throughout New York City, about 1,000 of them. And 5% wanted to try it. So once she saw this and saw that there was an opportunity to send dresses using an online virtual platform, she quickly scaled it to this. A dress that was able to be sent anywhere in the United States, and you can return it easily. It comes with some return postage. Very easily, you can return it whenever you're done. Okay. Now, Jennifer Hyman, this is where I get a little technical. She used what's called the Innovators Method. It's no accident, okay? Many of you, and many of my fellow employees, and myself included, a lot of organizations and business schools try to teach you how to make long-term business plans. You try to study the customer, you analyze to death, you come up with some strategy, you argue about it with your colleagues, meeting after meeting, and you try to bulletproof the business plan before you actually roll it out. Innovators Method is the industry's answer to the business model. There are many different types of tools. Innovators Method is just one. So you might have heard of different tools from different industries, like lean startup. You might have heard of design thinking. Have any of you heard of any of these things? You might have heard of discovery-driven planning. You might have heard of agile. The great thing about the Innovators Method is it finds all of the commonalities from those 4, 5 design thinking type of tools. And this is what's left. This is something that's in all of those tools. Insight, problem, solution, business model. And the difference to the business plan is this is designed to be very quick. It's designed to be something that you experiment. You come up with an idea and you experiment constantly, and you pivot, pivot, pivot until you find something that works. And if it doesn't work, Innovators Method is designed for you to make it fail quickly. So what we learned at DTAC, the management and I, when we went to INSEAD, was we need to celebrate failures. Everyone wants to avoid failures. But we learned of companies that say, hey, let's celebrate. We killed an idea that wasn't going to make us money. Let's push the fail button as quickly as possible and pivot to another idea. Alternatively, the Innovators Method is great because it allows you to quickly scale up. And these experiments are meant to be very cheap, done very cheap, and then you scale up. This was, the Innovators Method was created by a professor from INSEAD. His name is Nathan Furr. And as I mentioned, Telenor sent all of their top management from around the world to go listen to this Nathan Furr and collaborate with him on this. So let me bore you with some of the granular details. I'll take you through the Innovators Method using Rent the Runway as the business case, okay? So the first process of the Innovators Method is savor the surprises, use an insight. So Jennifer Hyman is walking around and she's thinking, okay, I might have to go to an event next week. And she realizes all women want to have what's called a Cinderella moment. They want to dress beautifully and they want to go to the ball and meet a prince, right? Every woman wants a Cinderella moment. The problem, what's the problem to that? The problem is not everybody can afford a Chanel dress or a Dior dress. It's too expensive. I don't know how much they cost. How much does it cost? Like, too expensive. 80,000 baht, 100,000 baht for one dress. And the ironic thing about these dresses is you guys look so nice and beautiful. Everybody remembers you when you go to these events. You're photographed. And yes, you're there wearing a beautiful red dress. So the next event, what happens? You're not going to wear that red dress. You want a new dress, but you can't afford the new dress. So this was the problem with everybody wants a Cinderella moment. Another problem is if you're up country, you might not have a Paragon or Emporium near you to buy these designer dresses. So how do you get it? That's another problem, was the accessibility. So the solution, Jennifer Hyman, this is something that's called association, okay? Association is a neat thing, and this is something that I would like for all of you to take back with you. There are ideas all around you for you to associate to, okay? Does everybody remember the iPad with the circular wheel to find music? That idea was an association. The founders of the iPad, the developers of iPod, went to the gym and they had a lock, you know, those circular locks. And they associated, they put two and two together. Other music units use a scroll down mechanism. They realize if you're able to turn or go around, you're able to go through much more data quicker. So then they associated the iPad with this circular lock, and they came out with the iPad. I have these associations once in a while. I always have a problem with my battery on my phone, right? So I often wonder, you have these calculators that have solar power. How come the phone doesn't have some sort of solar power cell to help maintain the battery? I don't know if the idea works or not, but these are things that people should experiment with. These are the experiments that should take place, okay? So these are associations that all of you can always do. It's not reinventing the wheel. It's using great technology from other industries, other products, to your project. And these things could be from very different worlds, but you can do it, right? So this solution part is where she said, okay, I'm watching Netflix. Does everyone know Netflix? Jen Hyman was watching Netflix. And she thought, if you're able to rent videos online, why can't we rent dresses online? In fact, Netflix is a great example of pivoting. Originally, the way Netflix was created was so that videos can be sent hard copy, physical, to homes. And they relied on the goodwill of the customers to send it back in good condition whenever they wanted the next movie. There's no late fee, but you can't get another movie unless you return the first one. So that's the Netflix model, and that's what Jennifer Hyman thought. Let's use the Netflix model to do my Rent the Runway dress idea. And then she experimented with the idea, the first 3 experiments that I mentioned to you, and she saw it work, and it's scaling as fast as you can. Okay, so she scaled it as fast as she can. The interesting thing is, in the second Barack Obama inauguration, 85% of the dresses worn by women came from Rent the Runway. So it worked. Now, to my personal experience, change is something that's inevitable. Some of it is planned, some of it just happens. Some of it you're part of the strategy to make the change happen or to pivot. Other times you're just a victim of it. In 1999-2000, I started my corporate career at a company called Orange. Are any of you old enough to know Orange? Do you remember Orange? Orange was here. It was part of France Telecom. It was here for about 2 years. And then France Telecom decided that they don't want to be in Asia anymore. So they pulled the strategy and they pulled out of Asia. Okay? Orange was meant to be a very energetic, transparent, dynamic culture. People really excited to come to Orange. In fact, I was one of the advisors for Orange before they actually came into the market, and they were trying to ask me what my concerns were. And my main concern for them was, how are you going to synergize this energetic, dynamic culture and align it with a CP culture? CP was the other major shareholder, okay? CP Group. Now, if you know CP Group, it's not really the same type of culture as Orange. It's sort of slow, it's big, it's a behemoth, right? So this is something that we had to manage to change from Orange to True. Okay, and I stayed at True for 3 more years to try and make this change happen. And I think they're still trying to do that to this day. Then, in about 2005, I got the opportunity to join what many estimate is one of the world's most admired companies, GE. And GE Capital at that time were in a big process of trying to build retail banking in Thailand. When I got there, they actually had started opening and operating a bank branch called GE Money Retail Bank. It was at All Seasons Place. And they were looking to do advertisement above the line, and they were going to expand the bank branch quickly. Another example of pivoting is the GE business development team saw an opportunity with Bank Grungsi Bank. And they thought, if we can buy part of Grungsi, we can automatically scale as fast as we can, and we could use our lean operation processes to make it better and make a profit. Okay? GE is a great example of a company that's always pivoting. Sometimes they're in banking, other times they pull out. Sometimes they're in this industry, other times they pull out. This is part of their playbook. They look for industries that are going to grow, they add value to the growth, and then they sell it for a profit. And that's what they did here at Grungsi. They integrated all of their operational processes, their lean, everything to make this bank better, more profitable. And I think they sold it for maybe 2 times what they bought it for. The last one is Thai Military Bank. Thai Military Bank was probably one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. Okay? I came into Thai Military Bank after ING bought a major share in it. Thai Military Bank had been around since 1950s, and as the name says, run by the military. When you got into Thai Military Bank, it was like an assembly line. 10,000 employees, okay? 10,000 employees with very unclear roles and responsibilities. The only thing that they would do is something that in lean terms you call a multiple handoff. You do one thing, you stamp it, and then you send it to the next person, and they stamp it, and they send it to the next person. This was not a high performance culture. It was a culture where the longer you stay at TMB, or Thai Military Bank, the higher up you got. You got promoted. So people could finish from Mahidol University, get a job as a junior employee at Thai Military Bank, and stay for 20 years. And over the course of every year, you get promoted. So you have these people who are there as secretaries, but when I arrived, all these people are senior vice presidents, but they didn't know how to perform. So one of the things that we had to do was we had to instill this culture of empowerment. We had to let them know that things had to change. It's a bank that had NPLs of 28%. I think that's a world record. It's a horrible bank, 28% NPLs. So we had to explain to them that if you don't change, the thing is going to die, you're out of a job, right? So you have to empower them. You have to make the roles and responsibilities clear. These minute tasks, these assembly line tasks had to get expanded. So job scopes had to expand. And people had to know what value they added to the organization so that when they go home, they could say to their family, this is how I've added value to TMB. The funny story is, as I'm going through the HR restructuring, believe it or not, there's one department in HR consisting of about 5 people. Their sole job was to organize wreaths for funerals. When funerals happened, this department, that's all they did. Yeah? So you can imagine how difficult it was to start to change TMB. But we had to really try to find a way to give them a sense of empowerment. We know that people, it's easy for people to say we're victims. It's very easy for people just to sit around and say, yeah, let me wait for an order from the top before I do anything. Okay? So this is why I came up with this make the difference concept. It's impossible for a top management team to go into an organization and transform the organization top down. What's necessary is to get all of the employees to say, what in your area can be improved? We in fact put it as one of our DNA. Why not attitude? Have a why not attitude. Why does it always have to be like this? Why do I have to get 10 signatures before something happens? We want them to challenge the status quo. And we want them to find a different way to do things better. Not just be different for the sake of being different. We don't need them to come in clown outfits in order to make the difference. We want them to find a way to do something better and add value. So this is what the Make the Difference empowerment culture was all about. It's one of my favorite programs ever, and it's something that we use internal and external, okay? Some of you might have seen the commercial of the children from Panyi Island. Did you see this commercial? It's an island in Phang in the southern part of Thailand. It's an island that has no land. And these kids were watching World Cup football, 1980s or something like that. And the kids realized they want to play football, but they have no land to play football. So this is what they did.
ถ้าพูดถึงทีมฟุตบอลของเราคงต้องย้อนกลับไปที่วันแรกที่นี่ชาวบ้านชอบดูฟุตบอลกันมากแต่ไม่มีใครเคยเล่นหรอกก็อย่างที่เห็นเรากินนอนอยู่บนน้ำมาแต่ไหนแต่ไรแล้วเพราะที่นี่ไม่มีพื้นดินสักนิดกีฬาอย่างเดียวที่เล่นกันได้คือแข่งเรือไม่ก็โม้กันเรื่องปลาที่จับได้วันนั้นแหละความคิดเล็กๆก็เกิดขึ้นพวกเราคิดตั้งทีมฟุตบอลขึ้นมาแต่ชาวบ้านก็คิดว่าพวกเราบ้าเด็กพวกนี้ส่งเสียงอะไรกันปาเปิ้ลหนีหมดแล้วเราตั้งทีมบอลเราจะเป็นแชมป์โลกมีแต่ทะเลเป็นที่กับทีมตกหมึกอย่างที่แกพูดพวกเราไม่มีแม้แต่ที่ให้เล่นฟุตบอล ต้องสร้างพื้นที่ของเราเองเรารวบรวมเศษไม้เก่าๆถูกเข้ากับแพปลาทำอย่างนี้ทุกวันหลังเลิกเรียนแล้วเราก็สร้างสนามของเราขึ้นมาหมุนโยกยี่แต่มีวัวตะปูเต็มไปหมดบอลตกน้ำบ่อยมากเลยพวกเราด้วยแต่เราก็เรียนรู้ในการเล่นบนสนามแบบนี้เพราะนี่แหละสนามของเรา
สนามนี้อาจจะเป็นแชมป์โลก
แล้ววันหนึ่งเราก็ได้ไปสมัครการแข่งขันฟุตบอล
ไม่รู้ดิ
แล้วเราจะสู้กับเขาไหวเหรอแล้วเราก็ตัดสินใจลงแข่งถึงจะไม่มีชุดก็เหอะ
นี่เลยแชมป์ชุดนี้รออย่างแรง
เราไม่รู้มาก่อนว่าจริงๆแล้วชาวบ้านก็สนใจเราเหมือนกันพวกเขาเอาชุดมาให้แถมตามมาเชียร์ด้วยตอนนั้นเราตื่นเต้นนะแต่พอเอาเข้าจริงเราทำได้ดีกว่าที่คาดไว้จังหวะเท้าของเราดีกว่าจากการเลี้ยงหลบตะปูแถมประตูในสนามจริงใหญ่กว่าตั้งเยอะแล้วเราก็เข้าถึงรอบ4 ทีมสุดท้ายวันนั้นฝนตกหนักมากแถมคู่แข่งก็เป็นแชมป์เก่ารองเท้าของเราเต็มไปด้วยน้ำเราเล่นกันไม่ได้เลยหมดครึ่งแรกเราโดนนำไป2 ลูกเราสู้ไม่ได้จริงๆเราไม่รู้จะทำยังไงหลังจากครึ่งแรกที่เราสู้ไม่ได้เราต้องทำอะไรบางอย่างเราต้องกลับไปเล่นฟุตบอลแบบของเราด้วยการถอดรองเท้ามันเป็นฟุตบอลแบบที่เราถนัดจริงๆคู่แข่งสู้เราไม่ได้เราเล่นดีขึ้นทำได้ดีขึ้นเราตีเสมอได้เราคิดว่าเราจะชนะแต่เพราะลูกนั้นในนาทีสุดท้ายนั่นแหละเราไม่เสียใจหรอกดีใจซะอีกที่มาได้ไกลขนาดนี้แถมชาวบ้านทุกคนก็ภูมิใจด้วยหลังจากนั้นความคิดของคนทั้งเกาะก็เปลี่ยนไปวันนี้เรามีสนามใหม่ที่ไม่มีตะปูแล้วแต่เราก็ยังไม่ได้เล่นบนสนามหญ้าอยู่ดี
แล้วเรื่องของคุณล่ะ TMB เชื่อว่าพลังในตัวคุณเปลี่ยนโลกให้ดีขึ้น TMB make the difference
So, do you like the commercial? Yeah? It's not just completely meant to be an external campaign. The reason this thing works so well is because this make the difference concept is what we were trying to tell our employees from the very beginning. Everything that the children did at Banyi are the messages and the spirit that we're trying to get our employees to follow. Don't look at a problem and say, we can't do it. Have this why not attitude. Okay, I want to play football, there's no land. I'm going to build land. We teach them this challenge the status quo, shift the paradigm. Okay, and we want this to be inspirational. We want this to be an inspirational message. The interesting thing is there are no actors in this commercial. Those are all the kids that lived on the island. It's very interesting. Now, the hard part, DTAC. Okay? DTAC has had, I would have to say, a very easy history since it began. 20 or 30 years, they didn't have to do much. We didn't have to do much in terms of competition. There was enough room out there for 3 competitors, and revenue share, market share just steadily increased all the time. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, we're facing a critical point in the survival of DTAC, and we have to look for ways to reinvent ourselves as well. Okay? And this is a much harder thing to do than a very agile and quick startup. But what we're mindful of is we have to find a way to bring that type of startup mentality, this type of experimenting mentality, testing mentality, and being willing to allow employees to try their ideas out and allow those ideas to fail quickly and celebrate it. This is what we're trying to do now. It's not perfect, but at least this is the principle, and we're trying to find a way to make it work. The important thing is we're trying to digitize everything that we're doing. That will help us create simpler processes internally, and everyone, whether you're in the back, in customer service, in the front, in finance, everyone has to find how what they do affects positively the customer experience. We called it Flip It. We called it a Flip It challenge. แค่พลิกชีวิตก็ง่าย Flip it. It's sort of similar to this make the difference idea, isn't it? Change the perspective and find another way to do what you've always done. Now, this is not new. This is not new for DTAC. For many years, we've been promoting DTAC Accelerate. All of these companies are just a few of the accelerator programs that get chosen with DTAC, and they get put through a 6-month boot camp. These accelerator programs, these entrepreneurs are given funding, they're given training by very well-known mentors from Google, from Silicon Valley, whatever, who fly in and mentor them. And then they have a working space that we call the hangar at the DTAC office, a very nice startup space where they're able to network and share ideas, okay? So this has worked enormously well. I think this year we're on the batch number 5, right? Batch number 5, and we're looking for ways to amplify these great ideas, looking for a new unicorn in Thailand so that we can push them to other Telenor markets, and they could leverage us as a global company. But the other benefit of this is, with this flip it mentality, things that these startups are already doing, these accelerator programs, we're taking that learning and trying to bring it internally so that our employees can do similar things. So this is DTAC Accelerate. They have 5 minutes to pitch their idea. Similarly, we felt that employees have a lot of flip it ideas as well, whether it's finance, technical group, whatever. Everyone has a flip it idea. So we did something similar for the internal that we did for the Accelerate. 5-minute pitches where you could come up with your great idea on how you can make the customer experience better. What can you do internally to make things better? And so we call it the Flip It Challenge. It was very popular. I'll give you an example of one Flip It idea that we had. My team came up with an idea that 80%, they looked at the data, 80% of customer complaints in the call center are about 500 baht or less. 500 baht or less. So their flip it idea was to convert these detractors, people that had to come and call the call center and have negotiation with the call center, and we had to find out if they were right or wrong. And it took us a lot of energy in the back office to reconcile as to whether this is right or wrong, all just for 500 baht. And the whole time as you're going through this process, you're losing a customer. So the flip it idea is, let's just write off these 500 baht complaints, okay? Save the back end a lot of money, and you have customers who are happy with the experience. This is not a new idea. I have a dog, a bulldog. I went to Amazon to buy it a harness. The harness was too small. And I had to contact Amazon and say, I need to send it back, it's too small. Do you know they credited my account even before I even sent the harness back? It's this trust in the customer, this goodwill that you develop for a small amount. And now I'm a lifelong Amazon user, very happy with the service. So I think we have a short video just to show you sort of this flip it idea and how it's converted throughout the entire organization.
ครับ I'm really happy to see all of you here. I think this must be some kind of record. I've never seen so many D-Tech people in the same place ever. This is an exciting day because today we're going to launch the new D-Tech brand platform and you're going to be involved. So you need to do all this work. And we're going to have a Flip It challenge where you're going to form up in teams and come up with Flip It ideas.
Flip แล้วดีค่ะ เจ๋งแน่นอนค่ะ Flip for change
แล้วเจอกัน
would like to change อีกนะครับเราต้องการเปลี่ยนมันเปลี่ยนคนใจร้ายให้มีใจจงรักครับสิ่งนี้ไม่ได้เป็นเพียงแต่ opportunity นะครับแต่เป็น responsibility หรือความรับผิดชอบของ D-Tech ที่จะทำให้ลูกค้ารักเรา
เราจะเปลี่ยนทุกอย่างวันนี้เราจะเปลี่ยนระบบให้ง่ายเพื่อทุกคนทำได้ครับผม
เราจะเป็นจุดเริ่มต้นจากจุดเล็กๆแต่จะเป็นการเปลี่ยนแปลงครั้งยิ่งใหญ่ที่เราจะฟลิปจาก 25 ให้กลายเป็น 25 ล้าน
So I've reached the end of my presentation, so I want to leave you with just a few outtakes. For me, in my personal life, one of the things I did to flip it was I went to Vipassana meditation for 10, 11 days. I'm not a very religious guy, but you quickly realize, and I think this is part of Buddhism, is each one of us in our bodies is always changing, okay? So change is happening no matter what, anyway. You just start to get used to it, and you observe the change happening, and you live with it. You be present, okay? Change is something that's happening at blinding speeds in this industry. If I had this talk about 10 years ago, it wouldn't be very interesting. But now it's happening very quick. So the outtakes that I'm leaving with you today are, don't fall too much in love with your own idea. So many people create an idea and they fall in love with it and they defend it to the very last step. They defend it and they're not willing to listen to other ideas. So don't fall too in love with your own idea. Test your ideas. Test it very quickly and cheaply. And if it's not working, don't be afraid to push the fail button. Conversely, always look for ways to pivot and pivot and pivot again. I think PayPal pivoted about 17 times before they came up with their current business model, and they're still pivoting. Amazon's still pivoting. So if something's working, you have to scale it quickly, okay? And then last but not least, all of us have to become comfortable with change and comfortable in a discomfortable environment. That's something that we need to embrace. And instead of feeling threatened by it, we need to use this change as an opportunity to grow. Okay, so that's my presentation to you. I think it went a bit over, but I think I'll entertain some questions and answers now. Thank you very much.
Any questions at all? Oh, a lot. You give me your names, I'll tell the deputy dean who's responsible for this. You'll get extra points. No.
Okay, thank you.
Can I answer from down here?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. My name is Diana. I'm from the Faculty of Social Sciences and Humanities. I would like to ask, to win the high competition, is it the brand is very important indeed?
Yes. Okay. I think if I understand your question correctly, how important is brand in with increased competition? What I've always learned is a brand is simply a promise. It's empty. It's empty if behind that promise, the rest of the organization is not aligned to delivering on that promise. So brand is a promise that the organization needs to deliver. For TMB, before we came out with this Make the Difference, we took a long time to clean up the internal processes first. We can't just say that we make the difference without being able to actually deliver that. A brand is not just a sticker or a logo. A lot of people get that wrong. A brand is the experience at all touch points. So you can't, but what I'm telling you in this presentation is you can't just bulletproof it until it's 100% ready either. There needs to be this sweet spot. So yes, you fix internally as much as you can, but at one point, you have to have the courage of your convictions to go externally and say, we make the difference. And yes, this was the stressful part of being in the management team is, can the organization deliver? But we made an agreement with ourselves. We said, we're going to make the difference. And when individual employees feel like they're not making the difference, or if they can't deliver, then let them feel humiliated. Let us embarrass ourselves, and then we'll do better the next time. So, yeah, brand is not just a sticker. You have to deliver. And that's what makes it a genuine brand.
So maintain the names of the brand, of the quality of the brand is also important?
The quality of the brand. Quality of the brand is important, but that's something that you have to earn the trust. It can't just be a logo or a brand that looks nice, but behind it it's a horrible experience. So what I'm trying to say is a brand has to be holistic. It's not just a marketing job. Everyone has to have a sense of the brand. And even the way we recruit people have to have the DNA of the brand. We're not just going to recruit people who they're afraid of change, they don't have the energy, they're not transparent people. We want to hire the right type of people who will live the brand, live the values, and can deliver that type of experience to the customer. Does that make sense?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ardi Wiranata. I come from Faculty of Social Science and Humanities. And for the first, I'd like to thank you for sharing us these beautiful presentations, and you enlarge our insight. And my question is, like you said, that people really had to change. And if we live in our comfort zones, it seems like it will kill ourselves. But my question is, if someone really love to teach, being a teacher, for example, and I do not want to change because this is my passions. So you mean that this this activity will kill my activity, or because I live in my comfort zones? What do you think? Can you a little bit explore more? What does it mean kill ourselves by staying in comfort zones?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure, that's a good question. I'm not saying that people need to always change industry. I'm saying you can do something you're passionate about. But I think the important thing for us as individuals is always to ask ourselves at the end of the day, is there something I could have done better? Is there something that I can shift the paradigm of the way I teach? Can I challenge the status quo? What are better teaching techniques? What are new insights that I could bring to the table? The change is, the comfort zone is dangerous when you just become complacent and you're not hungry or passionate to try to do better. So I think what I'm trying to get at today is don't get into these comfort zones where you're just happy and complacent. Everybody, I believe that everyone put on earth has a role to play, and everybody wants to make a difference before they die. You don't want to just come out, do a few things, hang out for a while, and then just eventually die. Everybody wants to add value. So I think if you're adding value, then find ways to continuously add more value. That's my answer.
I mean like this. If if you are a teacher, for example, and you want to try to another activity, so it can I mean what we call we still focus in first activity, but we want to do other activity. So it can be said like we want to try another comfort zones.
You know, what you say is something that's very typical of an organization, actually. At Telenor, at TMB, one of the important things before you can get to a C level is rotating jobs, okay? So you might start off your career in finance, but in order to move up, you need to understand the business. You might need to understand sales and marketing. You might need to understand branch network or the technical side. So in order to add value to yourself, this is something that organizations try to instill, job rotation, in order to build your career and build how multidimensional you are. So yes, if I put that towards the teaching world, if it's a parallel, then yeah, as a teacher, then why not continuously learn other faculty? Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Please.
I'm Yuti Jo from Faculties of Science, and first of all, I would like to thank for broadening our horizon. And I would like to know is that is it the changing is correct in every circumstance and situation, or in what situations does we have to know is that we need to change or not? Because as you, and I'm from Myanmar, and as you, some of you will know about this, our country is now in the transition period, and we are still continue our changing process. And so in what situation we have to realize that changing is in need or not?
I just went to Myanmar for a Telenor conference about a month ago. So thank you for your question. I was surprised. I've never been there before, but I was amazed at how developed Rangoon was. It's in the digital industry. Thailand used to be a country that tried to compare ourselves with South Korea, and we needed to try to find a way to keep up with South Korea. Now South Korea has just accelerated way beyond us to a point where it's very difficult to catch up. Conversely, we were laughing and joking that if we're not careful, Myanmar is going to catch up. When I went to Myanmar and I looked at our Telenor operations there, in fact, I don't even think Myanmar is going to catch up. They might actually leapfrog us. I think their propensity for change is quite healthy, and they're doing things that are very good in order to ensure that this change is taking place, perhaps even more so than what we're doing in Thailand. And I need to try to find a way to work with external stakeholders to push the change for the benefit of the country. But is change always necessary? No, not necessarily. There are opportunities where it might be premature to change. So if I take banking as an example, you might have heard of something called Me Bank, Me by TMB. This was an online experience where you could take savings from other banks and use it into this one Me account online, completely digital. It worked somewhat well with early adopters, but it was launched about 5-6 years ago when the competency for digital banking was not as strong as it was today. So now if you look at Me Bank 5 years ago and you look at it today, other banks are starting to go into this Me type of space.
Yes.
So the idea is a good one, the opportunity for change is a good one, but maybe TMB didn't experiment well enough to see if it would gain traction fast enough. So it's something we launched too early, now everyone's able to catch up, and now the market is sort of ready for it. Yeah?
So is the countrywide, and how about the comparison between the countrywide and individual changing process? Is that the same?
I think it's very similar. Yeah. Is countrywide similar to individual need for change? Yeah, I think individually we need to look for opportunities to grow ourselves, cultivate, become a better person, add value to society. Organizations need to do the same. But as individuals, we don't go bankrupt, right? We just eventually die. If you don't add value, then up to you.
Yes.
Organizations, if you're not adding value, they just go bankrupt. And there are many organizations that have gone bankrupt, right? You look at Kodak.
Yes.
And I always look at Kodak versus Fuji. Kodak couldn't adapt. Fujifilm did. Fujifilm pivoted to become a cosmetics company. Why? Why does Fujifilm become a cosmetics company? Because a lot of the cosmetics, a major component is collagen. And film, the major component is collagen. So now they're able to survive. Kodak went bankrupt. So I think, yeah, organizations always have to look for ways to pivot, to make themselves relevant to the customer. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Florian from ICT faculty. In your opinion or from your experience, what are the key success factors to achieve a open-minded or change innovation culture in a company, and what role does the people's culture play in that?
Okay, that's a good question. That's almost a whole nother talk. Because one of the things that we learned at INSEAD is, how do you get the startup mentality? It's easy when you're just a startup with a few people and you're just starting out. But how do you balance it in an organization that's been around for 20 or 30 years? How do you get this startup type of culture going? Some advertising companies have tried this. They've tried to buy guerrilla marketing companies and bring them into the fold. And what happens is it fails. Because the guerrilla marketing company that's used to doing things in a startup way, experimenting, they start to get immersed with this culture of everything moving slow, financial planning, analysis to death, right? So it's what we call blue way of thinking. Blue way of thinking is everything is deliberate, financial processes, things like that, bulletproofing that I was talking about. The red way of thinking is this startup mentality where you want to move everything fast, you want to try, you want to fail quickly, you want to pivot. So I don't know if I have an answer for you, but it's something that we as an organization have to keep in mind. We want to find a way to promote the red way of thinking and immerse that into the blue way of thinking. You need both to have the right balance. But where's the right sweet spot? And I think that's the journey that DTAC and actually all of Telenor is going through worldwide is how can we bring that type of startup mentality into a big organization and make it work? So I don't think it answers exactly your question, but I guess the proof is in the pudding. If the organization is able to change and pivot and offer something that's new and relevant to customers, then I think that's, and it's something that customers savor, that should be the main indicator. Do customers find it a better experience than it used to be? Is it a better product than what was there before? Is it something where customers say, man, I never thought of that, but now that it's out there, it's something I can't live without? Once you have that, then I think that's the right indicator.
Thank you.
Welcome. Hi.
Thank you. I enjoy your speech so much. I've noticed that you try works for many countries. Is that your way of changing in your life? And I'm from China, and people, many students, many friends around me want to take job, like take one job in their life forever. So what's your opinion on the forever job?
Right. Yeah. This is a little bit personal, okay? I
Sorry for this.
No, it's okay. But I hope you don't fall asleep listening to my answer. I moved to Thailand from the United States in 1997. I graduated from the University of North Carolina with a degree in political science. And after graduating, I had very lofty goals and ambitions to come back to my home country to try to find a way to make Thailand a better place. So I thought the best way to do that was to come. Can I use your microphone? I'll change here. The best way to do that was to come back to Thailand and take a job with the governor of Bangkok, a man named Pichit Radakun. Okay. I started off as an advisor for Pichit Radakun in foreign relations and urban economics. I helped him to create investment centers that are still there to this day. One is called Bangkok One. It's at Ton Son Road in Sukhumvit. So this was designed to promote Bangkok as a great place to do investment. The problem in working for government is it's very hard to drive change. You're embedded in a culture that is very senior-oriented, and they like to move slow. They don't need to stress out. Okay, so I was frustrated being in government. And my personal goal was to change into the private sector and find ways to contribute to the country and, dare I say it, humiliate the government and show them that, hey, why are we not doing this? The private sector is doing it. So I've done that a bit. I've looked for jobs that will allow me to contribute as much to the country as I can. At TMB, I was able to do a great corporate social responsibility project helping slum children using the arts to empower them. It's something that the municipal governors in Bangkok came to listen on how we did it, and they said, can we have one of these centers too? And I said to them, why don't you do it yourself? You're the government. Now, the reason I went to DTAC, I had a nice, simple, easy life. Then I decided to join DTAC. Why? DTAC is such, I'm not just saying this, I put my money where my mouth is. I joined the company because it's a good company. It's a company that tries to do things in Thailand in the right way. It tries to do things in a transparent way. No money under the table. We try to build an ethical platform upon which to do business. And my motivation is I want to show that good guys can win in Thailand. Good organizations can win. And I'm sure that if Kun and I and the rest of the DTAC team, if we're able to turn this thing around, then we could be a very strong beacon for inspiration for Thailand, that you don't need to do things unethically in order to succeed. If DTAC can do it, any organization will be able to do it because it's hard. It's hard to do things the right way. So that's why I joined DTAC, and that's why I keep moving around. I could have stayed at TMB, but I wanted to join DTAC because I think this is the the right catalyst for change the country needs today for Thailand to stay competitive as Myanmar, as other countries are passing us in the digital competition.
There's no more questions. One more. Good. Okay, Mika.
Oh, sure.
Just one more. Okay, just one more. Okay.
Thank you. I really enjoy your sharing. You say that a brand is a promise. In case that, I would like to know if a brand there was something happen, make a employee or customer lose faith for the brand or its products. So is it possible for this brand to make something change? So to make to gain the customer back. Is it possible for this? And if it's difficult, thank you.
I think there are plenty of examples that show both. There are plenty of examples that show both. And I go to the automobile industry. Automobile industry, there are recalls all the time. You know, Toyota even just recently, last year I think, we had to recall globally over millions of cars. Toyota is supposed to be one of the most reliable car companies ever. But it doesn't seem like it's made a dent in their revenue because I think they've earned people's trust, and the way that you deal with the issue is representative of your brand. Are you genuine when you're troubleshooting? Are you genuine when you have these issues and the way you deal with the customer? So I am always from the school of thought that mistakes, if they happen, you know, you want to try to preempt them from happening. But the way you deal with the mistake is part of who you are as a brand. Just like an individual, you make a mistake, are you willing to accept the mistake? Are you willing to do things better? So I think the companies that are able to do that will actually build the brand to be stronger, and people will actually appreciate that type of honesty. Does that help? You're welcome. Oh, one more. Go ahead, I can hear you.
My name is Nemion, Department of Medical Microbiology. So I'm confusing with changing. I think there is a lot of changing. We have to accept changing. So I want to know your opinion. Is better slightly changing and suddenly changing, and is better continuous changing and suddenly changing, and then it's better completely changing. I want to know your opinion.
Again, I don't think there's one right answer for that. Companies that can continuously adjust to customer behavior will always stay ahead of the trend. So you start to see the likes of Apple or something constantly changing and improving based on customer behavior. That's why you get an iPhone every single year or every other year. They're always looking for ways to change. But then there are also external forces that require radical change. So my example would be something like, I love watches. Okay, so in the 80s, there was a new technology called quartz, or this battery. It almost wiped out all of the mechanical watch industry. Rolexes, Patek Philippe's, all of these things were starting to disappear, and you lost a lot of watch brands in the late 70s, early 80s, until they were able to pivot. And they realized when individual customers make decisions, it's not just based on a functional decision. If it's a functional decision, then yes, I'll just go buy a digital watch. It's more accurate than any mechanical watch can be. But what they wanted to emphasize more and adapt to was people wanted to show off. They have an emotional factor when making a purchasing decision. So that's why you see the Patek Philippe ads, that you're not buying a watch for yourself, you're holding it for the next generation. That's a emotional type of decision making. And from that emotional type of decision making, you have these social decision makings. How will I look to my friends if I have a very nice watch? So the watch industry didn't gradually change. They were forced to change, otherwise they were going to die. And there's no justification to buy a mechanical watch over a digital watch to this day. But now, it's becoming much more popular to have the mechanical watch. You know? So there are many more countless examples, but
so introduce, I'm using T-Touch operator, and then I want to change to like the other operator. Just introduce is better, and I completely change to use other operator. So you mean introduce to change and completely change is quite different. I'm confused with the changing.
I'm not sure if I understand your question correctly, but should you just change for the sake of changing? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, I want to change, but I want to introduce other operator. So it's by marketing. In this operator is better than better than you. I want can I change, or is this operator is not better than the T-test, and I mean I compared to choosing T-test, or it's little bit confusion there.
I think, wow, that's a very hard question to answer for you. I think the premise of my presentation is we should be open to change, open to experimentation, opening to try something new. And if it doesn't work for you, then allow it to fail seamlessly. And if it works, then you stay with it and build upon it. If you're trying to choose an operator, if you're not happy with one, I've tried many operators, and I end up choosing the one that I'm most comfortable with. It might not always be about network coverage. It might be the way I deal with customer service. How well do they treat me as their customer? And if I'm comfortable with that, then I'll allow some of the little mistakes that happen, as long as overall I get a good customer experience. So I think as customers, we have the benefit of trying many different things. You go to restaurants, you don't just go to one restaurant, you go to many. So likewise with operators, if you're not happy with yours, then yeah, then try another one. And come to DTAC, I think you'll be happy.